Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel. So back in December, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom came out in theaters. The last movie in the DC Extended Universe. It ended up making money at the end of its theatrical run, but it wasn't anywhere near the billion-dollar hit that was the first Aquaman, and still not a good movie at the end of the day. But now that that movie is finally out on Blu-ray and 4K, I figured now would be the perfect time to finally rank all the DC Extended Universe movies and Peacemaker, since this series is long dead. So I ranked all the movies back in 2020. Now it's time for the definitive ranking of the DC Extended Universe, from the worst to the best. So if you've been subscribed to me as far back as 2020, you may recall that I already did a DC Extended Universe ranking video, but that was only from Man of Steel to Birds of Prey. Wonder Woman 1984 was supposed to come out that June, but because we were in lockdowns due to the COVID pandemic, there was no Wonder Woman 1984 to see. And in this ranking video, you may see certain movies switch places and be in different slots than they were before, because I've had time to rethink about certain movies in this series and have decided, you know what, this isn't as bad as I remember, or wow, that's far worse than I remember last time. So that's the big heads up with this list. And also, I know I've not been the kindest to the DC Extended Universe, so for this final time, I'll make sure to say something good about every one of these movies, even the ones that I hate. So without further ado, let's just get this list started with number 17. Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. One of the great things about doing this definitive list is that this will be the very last time I willingly go out of my way to talk about this piece of shit of a movie. And honestly, I don't know what else I can say at this point. I've pretty much exhausted this movie every time I've talked about it, from when it came out in theaters, to doing a spoiler review, to reviewing the Ultimate Cut, to my worst of 2016 list, to my worst of the decade list, to my previous ranking video, to rewatching Man of Steel and BVS. I don't know what else I could say. I mean, Henry Cavill sucks as Superman. None of the lessons from Man of Steel were even acknowledged in this movie. Jesse Eisenberg is uncomfortable to watch. It's way too long. It's far too pretentious. Doomsday is just an ugly mess of a creature. The security camera footage previewing every Justice League member is flat out embarrassing. And the title fight is underwhelming as hell and clearly one-sided towards Batman's favor. The only new thing I have to add is that now that the DCEU is officially done, I can say with confidence that this was the movie that crippled this franchise. Now, Justice League may have ultimately killed this series, despite the success of Wonder Woman and Aquaman at the box office, because everything else after Justice League has been pretty much limping in terms of a financial success. But Batman vs. Superman was the clear sign that, oh, this is not going to work out. This was mostly Warner Brothers' fault, because Warner Brothers was so adamant about catching up with Marvel, who had 2 Avengers movies at the time, that they wanted to get to Justice League as fast as possible. But I'm not letting Zack Snyder get away scot-free with this, because having him dictate the entire look of this franchise, the cast to play the Justice League, was not the right move at all. And hearing him recently say that having Batman not kill people makes him irrelevant just ultimately proves that he did not understand these characters one tiny bit. So again, Warner Brothers is definitely at fault for this, but Zack Snyder carries a lot of the blame too. Now, if I haven't lost any of you who love this movie, what's good about it? Well, I think Ben Affleck makes for a really great Bruce Wayne and Batman. The costume looks great. I love seeing the Battle of Metropolis from Man of Steel from Bruce Wayne's perspective. Even though Wonder Woman has no reason to be in the movie, she is the best part of it. And the warehouse sequence is great. It's the Batman action scene I've always wanted to see. But even then, that's not at all enough to save this movie. Neither cut, because I'm one of the few people that thinks the Ultimate Edition is worse. But hey, whatever. I detest this movie. It's still my least favorite in this series, and I'm glad I never have to talk about it anymore. Number 16. Suicide Squad. Most people would rank this below Batman vs. Superman. Even those that love BVS say, no, Suicide Squad is absolute garbage. And it is. It's an incomprehensible mess in terms of editing. The script is just all over the place. And I don't think any of the actors really brought it their all. I mean, Viola Davis may be the best one as Amanda Waller, but I think she did a better job in future appearances. Will Smith is as charismatic as ever, but he's just playing Will Smith again. Margot Robbie is quite underwhelming in this first movie as Harley Quinn, but again, like with Viola Davis, she would thankfully be better in future appearances. And then the less said about Jared Leto's Joker, the better. I mean, it's basically beating a dead horse at this point. So what's good about this movie? Well, unlike Batman vs. Superman, I do like how it's not ultra serious. There is actually some sort of color palette to it. And you know what? That's pretty much it. Oh no, you know what? There's one other thing, and this is not really something the movie did that was good. I had a much better theater experience with Suicide Squad than I did BVS because I saw it with a bunch of my friends at work. We all hated the movie, but we all grabbed dinner afterwards and talked about stuff that I cannot say on this video. So if nothing else, even if I hate the movie, the experience of seeing it was something that is unforgettable for me. Number 15. The Flash. This movie has gotten actively worse the more I've had time to sit on it, because I was hesitant at first, especially with people calling it one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, especially considering Ezra Miller's reign of terror prior to the movie coming out. But you know what? I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. And oh boy, is this movie hot garbage. Outside of Ezra Miller's legal issues, I was never that big a fan of their portrayal of Barry Allen. I just think they're obnoxious, they're irritating, and having to watch two of them in this one movie is just nails on a chalkboard at the end of the day. The movie is also flat out disgusting. It is an ugly looking train wreck with the very worst CGI that this series has ever presented to us, especially during that big multiverse. Here's a cameo from every other actor who portrayed another superhero, which even that itself is disrespectful because George Reeves' history with Superman is very well documented, and the fact that they put him in this movie is just uncomfortable. Apparently they didn't get any clearance from Christopher Reeve's family to use his likeness for Superman. The Nicolas Cage appearance is awkward. It's just an overall ugly movie, not just outside, but also in when you really think about it. So what do I like? Well, I like the opening action scene. Getting to see Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot as Batman and Wonder Woman one last time was something I really liked. And Michael Keaton does a really good job coming back as an older Batman. And while his action scene is really good, there's not a whole lot that he does that's even the least memorable, and the way they kill him off twice is pretty lousy. Also, I did enjoy Sasha Calle as Supergirl, and I'm kind of disappointed that she appeared this late in the series and not carrying over to the new DC universe, because I thought she had a lot of potential. But really, at the end of the day, The Flash is hot garbage, and if I had done a worst of list last year, this could easily have been at least in the top 5 of worst movies of 2023. Number 14. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the final entry in the DCEU. Now, I don't really have much else to say about this movie. I will say I'm not as harsh on it as I was when I first saw the movie, because it's just kind of there. It doesn't really expand anything in terms of the universe. It's very much a standalone movie, and didn't make me angry like The Flash did. It's just an average comic book movie with generic action scenes. There's some moments that amused me, but really, it's just there. It's such an underwhelming way to end this franchise, and the last shot of the movie, where Orm puts a cockroach in his burger, I just feel like that sums up this entire franchise. Number 13. Black Adam, the movie that was destined to change the hierarchy of power in the DC universe, but ultimately led to the decision to just reboot everything. Oh, the irony. When I saw the trailers for this movie, I thought it looked like a parody of superhero movies because Dwayne Johnson was mostly known for making action comedies, and he's very good at them. So it was kind of weird to see him in this role, even though he's been trying to do this movie ever since 2007. And there is actually a handful of stuff that I do like. I do like Dwayne Johnson for most of the movie. I think some of the action can be pretty brutal. Dr. Fate, played by Pierce Brosnan, is the best character in the movie, hands down. And for as little as Atom Smasher and Cyclone got to do in this movie, I actually like those actors and what they brought to the role. That being said, this movie is very stale. It's just kind of mediocre, it's paint by the numbers, and had this been a much better movie, I probably wouldn't have even questioned or even cared about all the trappings that it falls into when it comes to superhero movies. But it's just not that special. It has an awful villain, probably the second worst after Aquaman the Lost Kingdom. And all the Easter eggs that tie into the rest of the DC Extended Universe just feel so forceful. There's no reason for Amanda Waller to be in this movie. There's no reason for Jennifer Holland's character from Peacemaker to be in this movie. And in retrospect, having Henry Cavill pop up at the end of the movie to set up a fight between him and Black Adam is even funnier, knowing that that's never gonna happen. I don't know. It's just a disappointment. From this point on, there are no movies that actually make me furious, though a handful of the next few movies I'll talk about do have some irritating moments in them. But from this point on, I don't hate any of them, I just don't like them. Number 12. Justice League. Now this is going to be a very, very controversial pick because lots of people hate this movie. And I will admit, rewatching it in prep for the Snyder Cut, it is so much worse than I remember. In hindsight, it's so easy to tell which scenes were directed by Zack Snyder and which ones were directed by Joss Whedon. It feels very choppy, and even cutting to those different scenes, you feel like you're getting whiplash tonally. Even though it's more colorful than Zack Snyder's other DCEU movies, it's unnaturally colorful. It's so distracting. It has some of the very worst green screen effects I've ever seen in a movie that cost $300 million. And there are some jokes that just do not hit well at all. This is the movie that most people, if not everyone, puts at the very bottom of their DCEU ranking video, mainly for how Warner Brothers handled the production, because yeah, I may not be a fan of Zack Snyder's movies, but using his daughter's suicide to boot him off the movie is so disgusting, and I don't fault anybody for ranking this movie at the bottom just based on that. But just talking about the movie itself, there are actually some elements about it that I like. In contrast with the Snyder Cut, there are a lot of scenes that pop up in both versions that this version does a good job at trimming when it comes to the fat. Like, there are certain sequences that do not need to go as long as they do in the Snyder Cut, and this movie trims it down to an appropriate length. This is also my favorite portrayal of Henry Cavill's Superman. This is the first time I actually felt like he fit the personality of the Man of Steel. And the mid-credit scene where he's racing the Flash, even though that final shot is very ugly, that's a scene that I've always wanted to see in live action with these characters. Again, I'm not going to fault anyone for saying that this is a bad movie, and it is, but I think there are some good things about it that have gone overlooked. And the reason I've never called this cut Justice League is because this movie was not entirely Joss Whedon's fault. Yes, he did contribute some of the very worst aspects of it, but when Warner Brothers fired the original director and brought him on to finish the movie without delaying it, that's more Warner Brothers' fault because they just wanted to get it out as quickly as possible, keep their date so the executives could get their bonuses. And really, you can't blame Joss Whedon. I mean, no, okay. In the same way I said you can blame Zack Snyder for the faults of Batman vs. Superman, you can blame Joss Whedon for a lot of the faults to this cut. But at the end of the day, it's more studio interference that really crippled this movie and was pretty much the death nail for the DCEU. Number 11. Wonder Woman 1984. When I first saw this movie, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, not as good as the first Wonder Woman movie, but I enjoyed it. And I think that was probably because we had just finished an election year. We were at the very tail end of 2020. So I just wanted something to give me hope and just a level of optimism. And Wonder Woman 1984 definitely filled those shoes. That being said though, this movie has certainly not aged well, and there are several elements to it that so do not work. If you remember Wonder Woman 1984, you remember the part in the movie where Steve Trevor pretty much takes hold of this random guy's body. And you would think that this guy has no conscience, like he's just pretty much used as a vessel. Well, there's a point later on where Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor have sex, take this same scene, but just reverse the genders, and then try to make the argument that this isn't non-consensual sex. So that's the absolute worst part of the movie, and the thing that really drags it down to being bad for me. But that being said, there are some things I like about it. I do like how colorful it is. I do like how Patty Jenkins was trying to go for that classic feeling of Christopher Reeve's Superman. I mean, honestly, Wonder Woman in this movie feels more like Superman than Henry Cavill's Superman ever did. And there's some fun action here and there, but really, at the end of the day, this movie has aged like milk, and it's just not good. Like, it's just not good at the end of the day. But again, I just don't hate this movie like so many people seem to. Number 10. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. If there was any movie in this franchise that disappointed me the most, outside of BVS, it would be this film here, because I really dug the first Shazam movie, and I was looking forward to Fury of the Gods. But the thing that really hurts this movie is that it feels very generic. It doesn't feel as special as Shazam did. A lot of the action is good, but it's stuff we've all seen in better superhero movies. I think the villains are quite lame, with Lucy Liu being terrible in her performance. The CGI is quite terrible, and the thing that really made me angry, like, I could forgive a lot of this movie if it wasn't for that Deus Ex Machina ending. Billy Batson dies, they hold a funeral for him, and then Wonder Woman pops up and says, hey, let me revive him, and brings Billy Batson back to life. And I'm just thinking, wow, way to go ahead and just ruin this really emotional scene. Because when Billy Batson gave his life to save his family, that hit me. I'm like, wow, that's actually a bold ending. So despite all my issues with the movie prior, I'll give the movie points for sticking with that ending. And then Wonder Woman came in and just ruined it all. So in the way Wonder Woman was the best part of BVS, she was the worst part of this movie here. Again, outside of that ending, I don't hate this movie because it's got some good action. I like the dynamic between the Shazamily. Rachel Ziegler does a really good job. The reason I'm just so upset with it is because it has so much charm. It has so much heart to it, but it just came across as very generic, and that ending killed the movie altogether. Number 9. Man of Steel. When I decided to do this updated ranking video, I was actually shocked at how high Man of Steel ended up on this list, because when I first saw it in 2013 in theaters, I liked it, but over the next few days I slowly just didn't like it. It just hasn't aged well since I first saw it in theaters. But after rewatching it in prep for Zack Snyder's Justice League, there's actually a lot that I admire about the movie. I really enjoyed the opening sequence on Krypton. I enjoy seeing Nomad Clark Kent, and basically his struggle to try and figure out his place in the world, because he's not of Earth, but he has this incredible power, and how does he use it? Everything with Russell Crowe's Jor-El I thought was pretty great. And Henry Cavill, every now and then in this movie, makes for a really good Superman. And I also thought Amy Adams looked great as Lois Lane, but they didn't really do much with her character. I mean, I liked her better in this than I did BVS, but I felt like this movie and the entire DCEU in general didn't know what to do with this character. And also, let's be totally honest here, there are select moments throughout the movie where Superman actually does save people. There's the oil rig, there's the bus, there's that one guy in the helicopter, so he does save people. The problem is that in the last act of the movie, when he's fighting Zod in Metropolis, he doesn't give a shit about anybody in the city, so he's just causing collateral damage left and right, and kind of defeats the whole purpose. And not to mention that with the school bus, he gets a scolding from Jonathan Kent about how maybe he should have let those kids drown. Jonathan Kent is probably the worst part about this movie for me. Nothing in this movie makes me more angry than Jonathan Kent and how just much of a piece of shit dad he is. And the scene with the tornado. When I rewatched this movie before the Snyder Cut, I was actually enjoying it. But then we get to the tornado scene, and I forgot how stupid, how silly, and how ridiculous it is that I'm like, okay, that's the worst aspect of the movie, and it's a Jonathan Kent scene, so of course it makes sense. That scene is absolutely atrocious, but the movie itself is just kind of mediocre. I've grown to appreciate it over the years, and every time I get to the end of this movie, I think there's a lot of potential for a sequel to Man of Steel that we never got, and the actual sequel we got was so fucking terrible that it crippled this entire franchise. But Man of Steel itself, still not a fan, but I'm not a hater. I've grown to appreciate it over the years. Number 8. Aquaman. Talk about another movie that I've grown to appreciate over the years. Now, I'm not a big fan of this movie, but I have learned to embrace the ridiculous aspects of it. I think James Wan does a really good job with the action scenes. There's a great visual look to it. Atlantis looks amazing. And as much as people don't like Amber Heard now, I thought her dynamic with Arthur Curry in this movie, it worked. Like, there was some legitimately funny moments between them. They felt like real people. And it's just overall fun. It's a fun movie all around. But I didn't think it was all that special. The villains suck. There's a lot of contradictions in terms of the continuity between this and how Justice League portrayed Atlanteans. It's just a corny, over-the-top schlock fest that can be enjoyed. It's not one of the greatest superhero movies out there, but it's certainly fun. I've grown to like this more with time, though I wouldn't go out of my way to rewatch it. Number 7. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now we are finally in the realm of DCEU movies that I like, and if there was one movie that I was not expecting to like at all, it would be Zack Snyder's Justice League. Because, you know, Man of Steel, not a fan. Batman vs. Superman, I think, is atrocious, but this movie surprised the hell out of me, because I thought the action scenes were far better. It doesn't look as fake or green screeny as Zack Snyder's previous movies. Tom Holkenborg's score is pretty great. Even though Darkseid doesn't really do anything in this movie, he looks fantastic, and the special effects overall are a massive upgrade. And it's also pretty eye-opening to realize that the best jokes in the theatrical cut to Justice League were actually Zack Snyder's. So this was a big surprise. But there's a lot in this movie that keeps me from saying it's one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. First of all, it's way too goddamn long. 4 hours. To be exact. There was no reason for this movie to be 4 hours long. 3 hours would do it. 3.5 maybe. But at 4 hours, there are easily sequences throughout that you could cut, and for good reason. There's a lot of fat when it comes to the scenes that appear in both versions. There's the sequence when a lot of the women are singing to Aquaman and one of them sniffs his sweater. That didn't need to be in this. The slow-mo shot of a sesame seed falling to the ground, that didn't need to be in this. All of those on-the-nose music videos that Zack Snyder is well known for don't need to be in this movie. He could have toned down the slow motion. The sequence where it's revealed that Martha Kent's actually Martian Manhunter, that needed to go and serves no purpose at all. And the entire epilogue with the Joker, the nightmare sequence, Martian Manhunter again, and any setup to future movies could have been cut out, and nobody would have missed them. So there's clearly a lot that's wrong with this movie, and I really cannot get on board with saying that this is one of the best superhero movies ever made, but I ultimately like it more than I don't. I like it enough to own it on Blu-ray and kind of watch it every now and then. So yeah, massive surprise, not in love with this movie, but certainly like it enough to own it. Number 6. Blue Beetle. I really wish this wasn't part of the DC Extended Universe because it's so distant from all these other movies that it could easily be the first one in the new DC Universe. But it's been officially classified as part of the DCEU, so I might as well rank it. It's a pretty standard superhero movie. If you've seen movies like Iron Man and Ant-Man, you'll see a lot of those aspects in Blue Beetle. It's nothing original, it is very much a been there, done that type of superhero movie. But what really holds this together are its characters. The family dynamic in this movie is very well done, it's very strong, and all the actors do a really good job. I love all the scenes involving the family, whether they be funny or heartfelt, and even though the action is very familiar, it's still a lot of fun at the end of the day. Considering how bad last year was for superhero movies, it was nice to get something more small scale and just fun at the end of the day. Number 5. Shazam. This movie is essentially Big, but with a superhero in it, and it's a lot of fun. I didn't think it was anything super unique because, as I said, it's Big, but I think there's a lot of heart to this movie. I love the idea of the foster family that actually loves each other and the foster parents that actually take care of their foster kids. The movie has a real hard gut punch when Billy Batson finds his biological mother, who pretty much tells him, "I never wanted you, get out of my life." That hits hard, and I think the drama really works in this movie more than people give it credit for, because a lot of the comedy kind of overshadows the drama, but it works. It all works at the end of the day. Yeah, the villain is cliche. Yeah, the CG effects are quite terrible, but you know what? This movie has so much heart to it, and seeing the Shazam family at the end kick ass was really a lot of fun. It's a shame this movie didn't do as well as it probably should have, because this really is, for a reason, one of the best movies in the DCEU. Number 4. Birds of Prey. This is a movie that I'm honestly quite shocked isn't higher on most people's lists, because it really got a bad rap when it came out. Now, admittedly, when I saw the trailer for this movie, I wasn't impressed at all. It just looked so bland and uninspired, but the movie itself was a lot of fun. It pretty much took everything that was good about Suicide Squad, but made it better. We got rid of Jared Leto's Joker. This is mostly the Harley Quinn story, which may be a problem for most people, but I think this time around Margot Robbie is more free to actually explore this character and truly embody Harley Quinn. And though it's a shame we're never going to see her play this character again, I feel like her with Harley Quinn is the equivalent to Robert Downey Jr. with Tony Stark. Like, you couldn't cast someone any more perfect. And as for the rest of the cast, Journey Smollett is great as Black Canary, Ewan McGregor is having the time of his life as Black Mask, and I understand he's not a good representation of that character, but he's still having a blast, and there are some legitimately frightening moments with him. My favorite character in this whole movie is Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Huntress. Just the fact that she's playing a character who has Asperger's is so fun, and probably the best parts of the movie involve this character. I just wish she was in it a little more. It is ultimately a shame that this series is dead and this movie flopped, because I would have loved to see her in that role again. But you know what? With the movie we ended up getting at the end of the day, it's still a lot of fun, and I think better than people give it credit for. Number 3. Wonder Woman. This was only the 4th movie in the DC Extended Universe, and with Man of Steel, BVS, and Suicide Squad, I was pretty much willing to give up on this franchise. And then Wonder Woman came out and just blew me away. It's such a great origin story that takes the best aspects of the first Thor and Captain America movies and just makes it its own thing. The action scenes are fantastic, Themyscira looks absolutely incredible, and it does away with a lot of the Snyderisms from BVS, because Patty Jenkins really made this movie her own. Gal Gadot is so good in this role. The No Man sequence is incredible. It's just a really great movie all around. I think it's one of the best movies of the last decade, in my opinion. The only thing that really hurts it is that at the end of the movie, it feels like Snyder just took over in terms of directing, because it's just this giant CGI battle that contrasts with the rest of the movie. But even then, the way this movie actually ends after the final battle left me on a high note. So for that, I'd say this is truly would be the best movie of the DC Extended Universe had it not been for the actual best. Number 2. Peacemaker Season 1. Now, I actually didn't review this show because, for me, TV shows take a lot more time to actually get in the mood of reviewing, because there's so much to talk about. So I'll just simply say, with this show, I didn't think that a Peacemaker TV series needed to happen. Considering how much of a scumbag that character was in the Suicide Squad, I just thought, why would I want to follow a show around this guy? But this show actually made me not only root for this guy, but have a lot of sympathy towards him. John Cena is absolutely great in this role and really does show that his best chops are with comedy. And under the right direction, like James Gunn and the other directors of this show, he can be really good at the dramatic moments. The rest of the cast is flat out fantastic. Every one of them is a memorable character. The jokes hit, it has its emotional cores, and let's also not forget that it has one of the single greatest intros to a TV show I've seen in the past 15 years. That intro is just so well done. It's so well staged, well choreographed, and the fact that everyone is keeping a straight face throughout that entire number is incredible. Like, Peacemaker is such a fun show, and even though this season is not going to be canon with the new DC universe, as James Gunn confirmed, I am excited to see season 2 of this show because it's that fun. Number 1. The Suicide Squad. The second this movie ended, I knew right then and there that this was my new favorite movie in the DC Extended Universe. It basically takes the very best elements of Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad and just makes them even better. Taking elements from Suicide Squad and actually making a good movie out of it, in addition to the R-rated comedy aspect of Birds of Prey, just made for a fun movie that made me care about all these obscure characters. Much in the same way James Gunn did justice to the Guardians of the Galaxy, he did justice to all these characters like King Shark, Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher, Peacemaker. This movie is just so well done. The action is exciting, it's gory, there's so many moments that I can pinpoint as being memorable. The big climax with Starro as a fan of giant monsters was a ton of fun. And the actors all do a great job. A lot of people have complained about how Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn kind of downgraded from Birds of Prey. I don't really agree with that, because there's a certain line in the movie where she talks about breaking up with the Joker and how she promised herself she wouldn't fall for toxic men. I think that's very much in line with her character from Birds of Prey. The only problem I have is that she's not in the movie as much as I'd like her to be, because knowing that this is her last appearance, I would have loved to see her go out on a high note. But again, the rest of the cast does a really great job, and this being my favorite movie in the DCEU makes me confident in what James Gunn has planned for the DC universe. Now, could any of these things go wrong? Could any of them be bad? There's always a chance, but considering this movie and the success of Guardians of the Galaxy, I think James Gunn's got this new DC universe in the bag. And yeah, the best movie in the DC Extended Universe is certainly proof of that. And there you go, that's my definitive ranking for all the DC Extended Universe movies and Peacemaker Season 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I haven't caused too much controversy with how I rank these movies, but you know what? This is my list. This is not your list. But that being said, I want to know how you guys rank the DC Extended Universe. What are your favorites? What are your least favorites? Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. If you want to find me elsewhere on YouTube, you can go check out my theme park and travel channel, Alexander Robinson Travel Channel, and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.